a lifelong dream, an old painter overshadowed by failures, and an exhibition where no one comes. Until that moment when blind eyes feel the soul of a painting. This is the story of a quest for fame that turns into a meaning that touches the human heart.
Hello, my dear friends. I am with you in this video with a new story.
Alistair Finch, 75 years young but feeling a century older, stared at his hands. Gnarled, twisted, and perpetually aching, they were the instruments of his passion and the source of his deepest frustration. Arthritis had taken hold years ago, a slow, insidious thief, stealing the dexterity that had once flowed through his fingers like water. Each brush stroke was now a battle, a negotiation between will and waning physical ability. He remembered a time when his hands danced across the canvas, effortlessly capturing the images that bloomed in his mind. Ambitious murals, portraits bursting with life, landscapes that whispered secrets. They had all sprung from the nimble touch he now only dreamt of. Those dreams had once been grand, filled with gallery openings in bustling cities, critics praising his innovative style, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing his art resonated with the world. Alistair sighed, the sound a dry rustle in the quiet studio. The reality had been far different. A few local exhibitions, polite but unenthusiastic reviews in the village newspaper, and a lingering sense of unfulfilled potential. He had chased fleeting trends, experimented with abstract expressionism, dabbled in surrealism, all in a desperate attempt to find his niche, his voice. Each failure chipped away at his confidence, leaving him with a studio full of discarded canvases and a heart heavy with doubt. His gaze drifted towards the Azure Dream, propped against the far wall. It was different from his previous works, a departure from the styles he had tried to emulate. This painting was him, a culmination of years of observation, contemplation, and a quiet yearning for peace. It was an abstract seascape, a symphony of blues and greens swirling together in a way that felt both chaotic and serene. The colors bled into each other, mimicking the endless horizon where the sky met the sea. There were hints of deeper indigos and vibrant teals, echoes of sunlight dancing on the water's surface. It was, in his eyes, the closest he had ever come to capturing the essence of tranquility on canvas. His modest home studio was his sanctuary, a chaotic haven filled with the scent of linseed oil and turpentine. Canvases leaned against every wall, some finished, some abandoned, each a testament to his lifelong dedication. Tubes of paint, brushes of varying sizes, and palettes stained with years of use cluttered every surface. Sunlight streamed through the large north-facing window, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air and casting long shadows across the room. It was a space that reflected his soul, a little messy, a little worn, but filled with a quiet, persistent beauty. In 2 weeks, he would be exhibiting The Azure Dream at the local art gallery. The invitation had been extended by Mrs. Davies, the gallery owner, a kind woman who had always been supportive of his work, even when others hadn't. He appreciated her faith in him, but a familiar knot of anxiety tightened in his stomach. Would anyone understand what he was trying to convey? Would they see the years of work, the emotions poured onto the canvas? Or would it be just another painting, destined to be ignored and forgotten? He ran a hand over the rough texture of his worn denim apron, the familiar gesture a small comfort. He had to prepare. The gallery needed to be informed of the number of paintings he would be exhibiting. The descriptions needed to be written, the transport arranged. Mundane tasks, but necessary. They kept the swirling dread at bay, at least for a little while. The inspiration for the Azure Dream had come to him during a rare moment of respite. He had been sitting on the beach, watching the waves crash against the shore, the salty air filling his lungs. The sun was setting, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. But it was the sea that had captivated him. The endless expanse of blue and green, the constant movement, the feeling of being both insignificant and connected to something vast and ancient. It was a moment of perfect peace, a fleeting glimpse of something beyond the everyday. He had tried to capture that feeling, that sense of serenity in his painting. He often wondered if he had succeeded. Sometimes, when he stood before the canvas, he felt a pang of disappointment. It wasn't perfect. He could see the flaws, the areas where his arthritic hands had faltered, the subtle imperfections that only he would notice. But then, he would step back, take a broader view, and see something else. A glimmer of hope, a whisper of beauty, a reminder that even in the face of adversity, peace was still possible. Alistair glanced at the clock on the wall. Time was slipping away, as it always did. He needed to get started. He shuffled over to his easel, picked up a brush and dipped it into a pot of cerulean blue. He stared at the blank canvas, the white surface a stark challenge. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and remembered the sea. The sound of the waves, the smell of the salt, the feeling of the sun on his skin. He opened his eyes and began to paint. The arthritis in his hands protested with every stroke, a dull ache that radiated up his arm. But he ignored the pain, focusing on the colors, the textures, the emotions. He lost himself in the process, hours melting away as he worked. The studio faded into the background. The world outside ceased to exist. There was only him, the canvas, and the Azure Dream. Later that evening, after a light supper of soup and bread, Alistair sat in his armchair, staring at the Azure Dream from across the room. The day's work had left him exhausted, his joints throbbing with pain. But he couldn't shake off the feeling that he was on the precipice of something important. Not fame, not fortune, but something more profound. A sense of purpose, perhaps. A feeling that, despite all the setbacks and disappointments, his life had meaning. He knew that the exhibition might be a failure. He knew that his art might never be recognized beyond the confines of his small village. But he also knew that he couldn't stop painting. It was in his blood, a part of his soul. And if, just if, his art could bring a moment of peace, a flicker of joy, to even one person, then all the pain, all the struggle, would be worth it. He reached for his cup of tea, his fingers stiff and clumsy. As he brought the cup to his lips, he caught a glimpse of his reflection in the window. An old man, etched with wrinkles, his eyes filled with a mixture of weariness and hope. He smiled, a small, wistful smile. The weight of Azure was heavy, but he would carry it. He had to, for himself, for the dream, and for the possibility that, just maybe, someone out there needed to see it. The night of the exhibition arrived, cloaked in an unsettling mix of anticipation and dread. Alistair carefully adjusted the spotlight, illuminating the Azure Dream, its blues and greens shimmering under the artificial light. He smoothed the non-existent wrinkles from his worn tweed jacket, a nervous habit he'd developed decades ago during his first disastrous gallery showing. That night still haunted him, a phantom limb of artistic failure. He pushed the memory aside, focusing on the present, on the fragile hope that this time things might be different. He surveyed the small gallery, a space he'd managed to secure through a combination of luck and the unwavering support of a handful of local art enthusiasts. The walls were painted a neutral cream, a blank canvas intended to showcase the art. But tonight, they seemed to amplify the emptiness of the room. Alistair had painstakingly arranged his other works, landscapes inspired by the nearby coast, still lifes capturing the quiet beauty of everyday objects, and a few portraits of local characters that had caught his eye. Each painting represented a piece of his soul, a fragment of his life poured onto canvas. He glanced at his watch. 7 o'clock, the official opening time. A trickle of people began to arrive, mostly friends, acquaintances from his painting group, and a few curious locals. He greeted them with forced enthusiasm, his arthritis throbbing in protest as he shook hands and offered polite conversation. As the minutes ticked by, the initial anticipation began to wane, replaced by a familiar sinking feeling. The gallery remained sparsely attended. He watched as small groups milled about, their eyes skimming over his paintings without truly engaging. He saw polite smiles, perfunctory nods, but little genuine interest. The vibrant colors of the Azure Dream, which had seemed so full of life in his studio, now appeared muted, almost apologetic under the harsh gallery lights. Alistair drifted towards a corner, trying to appear nonchalant as he eavesdropped on snippets of conversations. He overheard two women discussing the refreshments, their voices laced with thinly veiled boredom. A man in a tweed suit, the same suit he seemed to wear to every art opening, muttered something about derivative brushstrokes to his companion. Alistair's heart sank. Had he really poured his soul into something so easily dismissed? He caught a glimpse of a young couple standing in front of the Azure Dream. The woman tilted her head, studying the painting with a thoughtful expression. Alistair held his breath, hoping for a sign of connection, a flicker of understanding. But then, the man chuckled and said, "Looks like someone spilled paint on a canvas. Modern art, eh?" The woman giggled, and they moved on to the next painting. The words stung, a sharp reminder of his past failures, the years of rejection and unfulfilled dreams. He remembered the scathing reviews of his early exhibitions, the art critics who had dismissed his work as amateurish and lacking originality. The memory was a cold hand squeezing his heart. His arthritis flared up, a dull ache that spread from his fingers to his wrist, a constant reminder of his physical limitations. He massaged his hand, trying to ease the pain, but it was no use. The gallery felt colder now, the air thick with disappointment. He felt a wave of fatigue wash over him, a weariness that went beyond physical exhaustion. It was the weariness of a lifetime spent chasing a dream that always seemed just out of reach. Alistair considered leaving. He could slip out unnoticed, retreat to the sanctuary of his studio, and forget this whole evening ever happened. He could tell himself that it didn't matter, that he painted for himself, that the opinions of others were irrelevant. But deep down, he knew that wasn't true. He craved recognition, not for the sake of ego, but for the validation that his work had meaning, that it touched someone, anyone. He glanced at his watch again. 8 o'clock. The exhibition was scheduled to run until 10, but he doubted anyone else would show up. The few attendees were already starting to trickle out, their polite farewells sounding like hollow echoes in the cavernous space. He felt a profound sense of loneliness, a feeling that had become all too familiar over the years. Just as he was about to resign himself to defeat and pack up early, he noticed two figures entering the gallery. A woman, tall and elegant, with kind eyes and a gentle smile, and a young girl holding her hand. The girl moved with a hesitant grace, her eyes fixed straight ahead, unseeing. Alistair recognized them vaguely. He had seen them around town, the woman always guiding the young girl with patient tenderness. He remembered hearing that the girl was blind. He felt a pang of sympathy, a fleeting moment of connection with someone who faced a different kind of challenge, a different kind of darkness. He watched as they approached the Azure Dream. The woman paused, gently positioning the girl in front of the painting. Alistair braced himself, expecting a polite, obligatory comment, another meaningless platitude. But then, as the woman began to speak, her voice soft and descriptive, a glimmer of hope flickered within him. He dismissed it quickly, attributing it to mere politeness, a desire to be kind to an old artist and his failing exhibition. Still, he couldn't help but watch, drawn in by the quiet dignity of the woman and the trusting innocence of the girl. Perhaps, he thought, there was still a chance that someone, somewhere, might see something in his art, something beyond the derivative brushstrokes and the spilled paint.
Our story is over, and I hope you liked it. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe. You can write your requests in the comments.